Dean, I'm really excited to have you join me. You're looking great. How are you?
I'm very well. Lovely to talk to you, Maria.
Fantastic. So listen, tell me a little bit about your background. And, did you wake up one day and say, I'm going to be a futurist?
No, certainly not. I mean, part of it's been by luck and part of it's been by design. I was born in South Africa. I mean, you probably guessed from the accent, I come from slightly south of the Thames. And I grew up in South Africa when we were going through this huge transformative period where we were moving from an apartheid to a democracy. And I experienced radical amounts of change in society and disruption. And I've always really been passionate and interested in how the world is changing. And I saw great examples of leadership through Nelson Mandela and how remarkable things can be achieved by people who have a vision and are very passionate about what they want to do and make a better world. And I think that gave me quite a good grounding. I had a lot of experience in strategy and innovation, working at big consultancies and in financial services. And that gave me a good grounding. I then moved to the UK, and that was a really interesting time because I set up Tomorrow Today. And Tomorrow Today was an amazing platform because it gave me the opportunity to really delve into how the world was changing and work on the things that I was truly passionate about and creating frameworks that help people to understand this changing world. And this was back in 2006 when I set up Tomorrow Today in the UK. And it was really interesting because I'd go out and I'd be speaking and I'd talk to leaders and I'd say, the world's changing. You've got a new generation of customers and employees, and you've got new technology and you've got new competitors. And they'd all look at me and say, well, I like what you're saying, but boy, we're doing well. So what's the motivation to change? And then what happened was Lehman Brothers collapsed. And I started getting phone calls from businesses and leaders saying, what you said 2 years ago now makes a huge amount of sense. We're looking at this world. It's not going back to normal. We can't just sit around and wait for things to kind of work themselves out. We've got new competitors. They're doing things very differently, new business models. We don't understand these new customers and new generation of customers and employees. Can you help us? So Tomorrow Today really took off in the midst of the Great Recession. And at Tomorrow Today, I guess the name kind of speaks for itself. It's about looking at tomorrow, but understanding what you can do today to create the future. So I don't see myself as a futurist in the traditional sense. I don't sit there with a crystal ball and say, this is what the future is going to look like and make predictions. I believe that people create the future. So if you want to predict the future, go out and create it. The best way to predict it is to create the future. And so I work with people to look at how disruptive forces are changing the world, and then to say, how do we use breakthrough technology? How do we use these disruptive forces to go out there and change the world? And for me, the exciting thing about this world that we live in at the moment is that we're living through a revolutionary time. I think you see these periods in history every 150, every 200 years, when forces of progress, disruptive forces come together, they converge and collide. And the world that emerges after that is never the same again. The ancient Greeks had they had a lovely word for it. They called it kairos. And kairos is a time when people who are tuned to change seize opportunity. So as a moonshot futurist, I want to work with leaders to create those moonshots that really help create the future, make a better world. I think we're living in a remarkable time in world history, but the future won't just happen. We've got to go out there and make it happen, and we've got to make it remarkable. So that's what I try and do.
Wow, that's amazing. And actually, you answered my second question because I was going to ask you why the Moonshot Futurists, and you've explained it now that you want people to help people create those moonshots that are going to change the world. I quite like that the kairos word as well, actually. That's really nice. I didn't know that term. I like that. Thank you very much. So you say that the most amazing innovations of the 21st century are yet to be invented. Is that because you're saying we're going to create them, or are you saying that things that have happened in the past are not brilliant creations? Surely they are great inventions.
Yeah, they are. They're amazing innovations. And we've seen the Industrial Revolution bring forth some incredible innovations. We have an amazing platform from which to build a remarkable world. The 21st century for me is in some ways it's frustrating. In other ways, there are huge opportunities. I look around now. So for the last, certainly since the Great Recession, so it's the last 7-8 years, one of the exercises I do in a presentation is that I'll get people to imagine that we're in a room that's a time machine, and then there's a line across the room, and they can come stand on this line and they'll be magically teleported into the future. But there's a little trick here, because there isn't just one future, there are many futures. And if you're feeling very optimistic about the future, you go and stand on one side of the room. If you're feeling pessimistic about the future, you go and stand on the other side. And I always make a joke. I always say, if you're feeling rather pessimistic about the future, and there's a window there or there's a door, please don't leave, or please don't jump out the window. And we talk about these things. And when I first started doing this exercise 8 years ago, I was feeling really optimistic. I was looking at all these new technologies, and I was looking at all these new technologies, and we've got 3D printing and self-driving cars and AI and all of these things. And but 8 years later, what's happened? We're not seeing companies leverage these things. We're not seeing remarkable benefits. A lot of people are tinkering, but they're not really making a big impact. And I think also what has happened is I had a son in that period. And I think as you look to the future, I don't know what's happening, sorry.
We're here, I'm here, you're fine, I've got you.
Sorry, we always, I love talking about disruption, because
Are you being disrupted your end? Because I'm absolutely fine my end.
I was being disrupted my end. It seems to have sorted itself out. So we've got all these incredible innovations, but I don't think leaders are doing enough to really leverage them. So I think the future, we're going to start to see that. We're going to see dramatic changes. There are huge promises in all of these different innovations, and the great innovations. We just started to put those pieces together, and yeah.
Fantastic. So you say something interesting as well, that you're saying that we're building on what we've achieved so far, and there's going to be great innovations, but you also then say you want audiences to unlearn in order to learn. Yeah. So how do you help them to do that, and why is it important to do that? Well,
the idea that as you look to the future, I think the big thing here is that we're at this revolutionary time in history. And there are no roadmaps. We can't tell you what the future is going to look like. If you were standing at the start of the first industrial revolution, you wouldn't know what the future is going to look like. And also the assumption that you can carry on doing what you've done in the past and that you'll have the same results, that just isn't true. So we have to unlearn what our conventional wisdoms, the old ways of doing things. Because I think the surest way to fail in a world that's changing is just to think you can carry on doing the same things over and over again. So we have to unlearn. The best way that we know to unlearn is to be curious, to be an explorer, to embark on adventures that involve experimenting and doing things differently. We always say to leaders, go out there and talk to your customers, talk to the younger generation. The younger generation, people create the future. So the younger generation are going to be the future. So go and talk to them. It's amazing how few businesses are talking to the younger generation. Go out there and create a shadow board of the young generation digital natives who are looking at the world differently. Get them to shadow your board, take their input. Those are great areas of advice.
I love the idea of a shadow board of a younger generation. And you actually talk about that, about minding the gap. Is that the kind of advice you give people? This is the things that leaders should be thinking about with regards to the different generations?
Yeah, absolutely. Different generations there's always been different generations in the workplace. That's not what's new. What's new is that the generation gaps have never been bigger than what they are today, largely as a result of the changing and the fast-paced change of technology. But it's not about just saying, well, what does the younger generation want? What do digital natives want? We have to create a workplace that is right for all generations. We have to create a multi-generational workplace. And each generation brings something of strength to the party. And we have to create generational empathy. And we have to help each generation to look at the world through the eyes of the other generation, to walk in their shoes and to look at the world. Because I think we look at the world differently. We're not necessarily different, but we look at the world differently. And if we understand those differences, we can, we can achieve a lot more. I love generational theory as a tool for building diversity into your teams. Diversity is a big hot topic, and you've got gender diversity, you've got religious diversity, age diversity, and generations is a great tool to start having that conversation. It's
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm nearer the older generation now, but anyway, let's not focus on that. So one of your topics is also about achieving remarkable things, about being really agile and productive and competitive. Yeah. Give me some advice. What can I do? How do I achieve remarkable things?
Well, so I was doing a lot of research around how companies were changing. And one thing I started to identify is that there's a new type of company, there's a new type of leader who is looking at the world and saying, how can we use the power of business to make a real difference? How can we use the power of business as a force for good? And I started to identify a lot of commonalities between what, say, Nelson Mandela was doing in South Africa. He had a dream, he had a quest to create a free and democratic South Africa. And you've got leaders like Paul Pullman at Unilever who are saying, how can we use Unilever to make a better world? And it's not just about profits, it's about being a positive contributor, making the world a better place. And it's a slow change, it's a trend that's starting to bubble up and having greater and greater impact. So I wanted to understand, what are these leaders doing who are embarking on these quests that have a big impact? So I went and did a lot of research of all these leaders, and I decoded what leaders on a quest are doing. And it's really interesting, because there's three things that leaders on a quest do. The first thing they do is they look at the world and they say, well, what's the big problem that I have an impact on? Where can I have the most impact in my world? So what's the big problem there? They then say, how can we use breakthrough technology? How can we challenge conventional wisdoms and challenge the impossible? And the third thing they do is they have an inspirational destination. So I call it the 3I model. You have impact, impossible, and inspiration. So the easiest one to think about here is JFK's quest to go to the moon. Very, very inspirational destination, and when you've got there. So around achieving remarkable things is to look at the world. What is your world of influence? We all have a circle of influence. And where can you have a big impact in that world? How can you challenge conventional wisdom? How can you use breakthrough technology, the new technology that's out there that can have a really huge impact if we unlearn and we think about these things differently? And then what's your inspirational destination? And how can that inspire the people around you to come and make a real difference? And let me give you a personal example. Maria, as you know, I was diagnosed with cancer two years ago. And I just finished writing my book, Quest, which was all about the art of leadership and competitive advantage in the 21st century. And I said to my wife, I need a quest. I've identified this great model about what wonderful leaders do. I need my own personal quest. I want to really go out there and test this. You've got to be careful what you wish for or ask for, because I was then diagnosed with cancer. So I thought to myself, let me put this quest model to good use and see if I can achieve something quite remarkable. So I said, well, what's my circle of influence? I'm concerned about the cancer, but I can't really influence the cancer. That's there. It's up to my doctors and nurses and so on. But what I do have a control over, an influence over, is my own personal health. So I decided to set myself this crazy quest, a radical idea of cycling 350 kilometers 3 months after completing chemotherapy and radiotherapy. Now, I haven't always had this wonderful sort of athletic physique that I have now. When I first was diagnosed with cancer, I hadn't cycled for ages, so I wasn't fit, and I was overweight. And so, but I said, okay, fine, I'm going to have to, if I'm achieve this quest, I need to start cycling now. And I cycled to the hospital on the first day of chemo, and I carried on cycling through all of the chemo. And it got really tough, and I had joggers running past me when I was on the bike. So my amazing breakthrough technology was a metal bar that attached to the saddle post with a bungee cord out of it. And I'd be able to attach my German Shepherd onto the bungee cord, and she would come running with me in the woods as we went mountain biking around. And she was wonderful in sort of motivation for me. So, the breakthrough technology doesn't always have to be this wonderful computing technology. It's just something that's new and different, I guess. And as a result of my quest to cycle 350 kilometers 3 months after chemo, and I participated in the Welsh Dragon cycle tour. I've been able to beat cancer. I'm fitter. I was fitter coming out of the chemo treatment than I went in. So it just shows you how powerful having a personal quest. And then for me, that's the wonderful thing about, if you want to achieve something remarkable, quests are wonderful. They're scalable. So you can have a personal quest, you can have a team quest, you can have an organizational quest. By understanding your organization's purpose and vision, you can develop these quests to go and achieve them. So for me, that's the wonderful thing about this kind of quest framework. And we need more moonshots. We need more quests, because we're looking at a world that has enormous challenges and problems. And I think and businesses are hugely powerful, and they do so many positive things. And if we can take the power of this quest model, achieve remarkable things, go on meaningful moonshots, I think the 21st century will turn out very well for humanity and the rest of the world. Yeah.
Brilliant. And I can confirm you look better now than you did before you. I mean, it's amazing what you've achieved. Really fantastic. Congratulations on beating that battle. You call yourself the cancer slayer now, and good for you. More people need to slay that cancer.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So going back to the business talk, though, one of the topics you talk about is the tides of change. And I love this because I think tides is brilliant. Could you explain what tides stands for, please?
Yeah, so tides looks at 5 key disruptive forces. The world's changing dramatically. So what is causing those changes? And tides are, in our mind, or my mind, the big 5 forces that are radically transforming the world. And it stands for, so the T in the tide stands for technology. The I stands for institutional change. The D for demographic. E for environment and ethics. And S for shifting social values. Now, these are 5 forces that have come together. They're colliding, and they're dramatically changing the world. And if leaders and businesses look at these forces and they have conversations about how these forces are going to impact and change their businesses, they can prepare and also change and create the future. Tides is a tool for having important conversations within your business. So if you think about Kodak or Blockbuster, these are businesses that employed very bright people, but they stopped having conversations in their organizations about how these disruptive forces were changing the industry. Kodak's a lovely example because they invented the digital camera, but they didn't continue to have the conversations about how this technology might catch up and overtake them.
Brilliant. I love it. I've always loved the tides of change, and the 5 forces of disruption is brilliant. So you've got an interesting idea, and you and I talked about it the other day, and it really excited me, and we have to share it. You've got a concept of who is going to be the world's first trillionaire. Can you share that?
Yeah. So a trillion. A trillion is an enormous amount of money. I mean, it's 1 with 12 zeros, and the mind boggles when you try and figure out just how much money it is. And I've read that you could line a $1 note, a US $1 note, you could line it up end to end, and it would reach from Earth past the sun. That's how far it would go. You could employ at the UK's minimum wage, you could employ UK laborers for the next 10 million years with $1 trillion. It's a staggering amount of money. Now, we have $1 trillion companies. So Amazon, Apple, Microsoft are now have passed that $1 trillion value. And it's predicted that by 2030, Jeff Bezos will become the first human trillionaire. So it's an amazing want to say accomplishment, but it's just amazing that we're going to have individuals with that amount of money. But now, I think there are kind of three lessons that we can learn from this from being a trillionaire. And I think the first lesson really is so the first lesson is what is it? What's the really big difference that you can make? Because think about this. Jeff Bezos started off with Amazon in his garage. So did Steve Jobs. And it's never been a better time for you to innovate and take a small idea and have a massive impact. So, it doesn't take a big idea to make $1 trillion. You can actually go out there with a really small idea, selling online books. Bill Gates was about putting a computer on every person's desk, which again is an amazing quest. So small ideas have a big impact. The second idea is that we're living during a time that is experiencing history's greatest rate of change, and we're living in this revolution time. This, as I mentioned, the Greeks call this time kairos, and the fourth industrial revolution is going to lead to times of where people will completely change the way in which we do things. So small ideas, doing things differently. And I think the third lesson is that there are huge opportunities. The United Nations now have what they call 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. And their studies show that if we release the business opportunities in these SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, it's going to release $12 trillion of value every year to businesses. So it's a great opportunity to really go out there and create some real value. And I think the most important thing is to say, to be a trillionaire doesn't necessarily mean that you have to earn $1 trillion. What if we change the concept of what value means? And we look at how could you create value for 1 trillion things on Earth? So, if you look for solutions for humans, for nature, animals, it's amazing. These small ideas can just lead to great value. So that's really the idea behind who wants to become a trillionaire. It's about finding ways in which we can do things of huge value for society. And you never know, when you find a solution that has an impact for 1 trillion things on Earth, you might just become the next trillionaire.
Fantastic. I don't think the television companies will pick up Who Wants to Be a Trillionaire somehow. I don't think they're going to want to do that one. But no, that's I can't even imagine it, as you say. So tell me, I mean, that your breadth of knowledge is so huge. What would you advise a client to do when they're bringing you in? How do they best get value from your expertise?
Yeah, that's a great question. The best area where clients get real value from what I do is around the innovation space. How do we get our leaders to believe in taking bold steps, in delivering against their strategies? And so often I hear companies say, we have our strategy, but it just doesn't come to life. People just go back and they carry on doing work in the same way. So our Quest model, our 3R model, really brings strategies to life and helps people deliver. Innovation, if you want to create an innovative culture, then we should be talking, because tides of change helps people to understand why the world's changing. And we find that if people understand the context and why the world is changing, then you find innovation really starts to just flow out of your organization. We spend far too much time in business thinking about, what do we need to do that's more innovative, and how do we do it that's more innovative? And we don't stop to think about the why. So, think about the why, and then think about the quest that you want to go on, and then let people use their creative imagination, empower them, set them free. And it's amazing what happens. And you can see this with someone like Elon Musk. Yeah? He's told the world what his great strategy is. He calls it his master plan. His purpose is to move the world towards a carbon-free economy. But he set his team the quest of creating an electric car that would beat a Ferrari from a standing start. Now, this is 12 years ago. It's a crazy idea. Yeah, 12 years ago, electric cars were milk carts. But think if you're on that team and you're the engineers and the designers on that team, and you've got to create an electric car that will beat a Ferrari. That's inspirational. He's not telling them how to do it. He's giving, companies employ very, very bright people. Free them up to be creative. Help them understand why they need to do it. So why they need to do it, we want to create a carbon-free economy. The destination, the inspiration destination, electric car that'll beat a Ferrari. Let them join the dots. And my frameworks help leaders and organizations connect those dots.
I love that. Brilliant. Another moonshot there, isn't it? So listen, I'm going to put you in a time machine now. Okay. And I'm going to ask you a question. If you were to be able to go back in time and talk to yourself when you were starting out as a speaker,
yes,
what bit of advice would you give yourself? Now you know what you know.
That's a lovely question. I would say believe in your message. Believe in yourself and your message that you've got something of value that people want to hear and will benefit from. That to me would be my biggest. I think what I've learned over this sort of last 10 years as a speaker. Just believe in the message and be excited about what you have to tell. I think we're living in an amazing time in world history. I feel very privileged to be able to do the research and to talk to the audiences that I do. Immensely fortunate. Just believe in them.
Absolutely brilliant. What a lovely place to leave it. Thank you so much. It's been great talking to you.
Lovely talking to you. Thank you so much, Maria.